the way that we use menu labors, when and where. Let's take a peek. Now, of course, from within an RO, if we open up an RO, we can go ahead and click on Add Labors, and here's our labor from service list. And this is where we would have all of our labors. Now, you'll notice from this service list that this type column here says menu or flat. And what this essentially means is that if it's flat, it's just flat rate. It's a flat rate job. It pays a flat rate hours of 1 hour, billed it out to the customer at 1 hour. Now the menu labors, we've got one here just started for fun. Essentially, we're giving flat rate hours to our guys if we're paying them flat rate or paying the commission instead of an hourly. And then we actually don't have any billed hours on a menu labor to the customer, again, because the labor is getting put together as a package, put together as a menu. Let's go ahead and open this one and see what it looks like after it's been built. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit. So right here on this menu labor, and you'll notice the menu labor screen, detail information screen, looks a little bit different than a flat rate labor detail information screen. We'll look at them both here in a moment. But here's our labor code and description. And of course, this is what is going to print on the customer's repair order and their invoice. So you can see here, it's pretty much the same information as a flat rate labor. We do have the flat rate that we're going to pay our guys. This is where it gets a little bit different. This is where we have the amount of the menu price, the parts or part placeholder that's going to be selected once we add this to this RO, and then we also have down here our total, and it is divided between labor and parts. But the whole idea between a menu labor is that if we have to adjust the labor or adjust the parts because we use a more expensive oil filter, for this example, this is a synthetic oil change, this will adjust the labor to whatever it needs to be so that we don't go over our menu price of $57.95. So let me go ahead and we'll start this one from fresh. Let's go ahead and add a labor and select labor from service list. I'm going to first select a flat rate oil change. Here we go. So this is what a flat rate oil change screen looks like. It's just the labor. Again, the labor description, what prints on the customer's repair order. Here's billed hours and flat rate hours. We're charging, paying our technician, yet also charging to our customer, because again, this is just based on flat rate. It's our labor rate times that number, and that's what gets charged to the customer. And as far as pricing is concerned, here's our different labor rate. So that's I'd say 95% of all labors are all flat rate. So let's go back into this kind of generic oil change that we have and click Edit so we can look at what this looks like. So here again, this one is actually paying a half an hour flat rate. Let's go ahead and change that to 0.2 to stay consistent. I can add in a hazardous materials fee for this menu, let's say $2. And then when I click over to price, here's my oil and filter. So let's go ahead and add this one. Yeah, we'll save changes. Let's add this one to the repair order. So when we select it onto our repair order, it's always got a green circle on it, and that lets us know the difference between a menu labor and a flat rate labor. Flat rate labors are just plain, no green circle. But here you can see it adds labor, $9.95, and it adds part placeholders here. And what we need to do, especially if we're tracking our inventory and tracking our accounting in our system, is we would click on that oil, right-click on it, and replace that placeholder with an actual part number from the inventory list. It's typically how we do it. And same for the oil filter. So let's say we're replacing this oil filter with the inventory list oil filter. Let's build this, let's see. Go on description, oil filter. Let's put this one on. It will prompt us here. You'll see. The placeholder price is $5 in the menu labor because we want to stick to a fixed price that we're charging for oil changes. But it also says the inventory parts price for that oil filter actually says $6.15. I mean, that's what our normal markup would be. And you guys know as well as I do that oil changes are loss leaders anyway. It's what you have to do to get the business in the door. But we have a couple options here. We can just say, yeah, go ahead and use a placeholder price, which means we're going to actually sell this part for $5. Or we could say use inventory parts price. So we're going to charge the $6.15, and when we do that and select it, it actually adjusts. It says the amount of this part has changed, and the menu price still needs to be adjusted. So do we want to stick to that $24.95 menu price, or do we want to say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and charge more because that particular filter for this particular vehicle cost us more? So if we say change the menu price to $26.10, it'll update it on our RO. If we say, nope, we're just going to stick to our menu price, it's going, look what it does. It's actually adjusting our labor to account for the difference. So we're still going to sell our oil for what we said in the kit. We're still going to sell, this is actually still the part placeholder, but we're going to sell that oil filter for the $6.15. But because we still want to stick to that $24.95 menu price, it automatically on the fly changes the labor. Does that make sense to everybody so far? Any feedback on that? So let's build one. Let's do one from scratch. Now you can, of course, right on the fly, let's delete this. Right on the fly, we can add labor and do let's say OC, oil change. We don't have one. We can click on Add Labor Service, and this starts the Add a Labor Wizard. So in here, it tells us it's either going to be a flat rate labor or a menu price. Of course, today's webinar, we're talking about the menu price labor. Now here it's saying labor code, so let's call it just OC, oil change. And short description, we'll call it oil change. And what we want printed on the description will maybe say perform an oil change, remove and replace oil and filter. Maybe we'll put check fluids as well. And here, we click next. In here, you'll notice we usually have a box up here that says build rates or build hours. So we're not really billing out specific labor times. We're going to do, again, a menu. So we are going to still put in flat rate how much we're going to pay our guys. We get, again, our paid by commission. Click next. And here we enter in, let's say how much we think our labor is going to be on this job. Let's put in like $8.20 of this labor is going to be, of this menu is going to be labor, and then it's going to start building on this menu price. But let's say we want this to be like a $29.95 oil change. So now we click to add our parts. Now, the way that I personally would do this when I was using the menu prices in our shop, and we only use it for a handful of things, oil changes being one of them, I actually, for the oil, I would actually put in the real live part number. That way I knew I didn't have to replace it later. So I would go out here, select my engine oil, put in my quantity, and the price. We'll just leave the price at what it is. And then I would say, now I also need my filter. I'm going to add a placeholder just for the filter portion. So we're going to just call it oil filter, quantity 1. Let's say it's $5. I'm going to price it out at $5. So now what I'm up to is $27.95. Now, in my system, I charge hazardous materials fees. I charge $1 per filter, and I charge 20 cents per quart of oil. And that's the way I did it at my shop. It's up to you guys how you do it. But the way that the menu works is that you actually finish it, and then you add that hazardous materials in after you've finished it. So I'm going to go ahead and click Finish here. And I'm going to hit Edit again. And if I jump over to my user charges right here, I add in that $2. Now, another way many of you guys may have set up in your system is you can actually tag an add-on fee, hazardous materials charge to the oil filter itself. So every time you sell an oil filter, part number 192, whatever it is, it automatically says add $1 of hazardous materials onto that RO. And I'll show you, we'll do another oil change menu labor here in a moment, but we'll do it with synthetic. And I'll tell you right now that that oil filter in the synthetic oil, I actually do have the hazardous materials already tied to it, charging 20 cents a quart for the Mobile One synthetic and charging $1 to that filter. So let's say, for example, we're going to put this in our kit. So now if I select it for this repair order, this is my description. This is my flat rate I'm paying to my guy. Got my oil, got the filter. Click OK. So now let's click on, we'll expand it a little bit to see our parts. If I were to click on Summary, let's see what it looks like. Because remember, I'm shooting for $29.95. $29.95. Actually, I've got it in here as a little something different. Looks like I called it a little something different. Let's change that, guys. Let me edit this real quick. Oh, good. This is how you need to know how to do it. I'm looking at that master record. No, I do. I have $2 for hazardous materials, but it looks like I have my oil already has a hazardous material on it. So let's go into here. I'm going to hit master record, user charges. Oh, 20 cents there. We're going to knock that off for the moment. So now if I go ahead on my summary, you can see hazardous materials are $1. It hasn't gone away yet, though, because I just added it on. But that way you can know you've got your parts, got your labor, you got your hazardous materials fees, and you can stick to whatever it needs to be in order to, whatever the menu, literally, usually behind the service writer's heads, says on the wall, this is what you're selling your oil changes for. So again, the most important part is after you put this menu labor on here, you have to replace the part placeholder, which you can tell is a part placeholder because we don't have a part number here. Again, you just right-click on it, replace it with a real live part number from inventory list, we'll say, and we'll just put on, let's see what we have in oil filter world. We'll put this one on. Again, it's going to prompt us, what price do you want to use? I'm going to go ahead and use the inventory, or use a placeholder price. Keep it the $5. So there it is. So with tax and everything, we're going a little over $29.95, but that's okay. So any questions on that so far? Okay, let's build one. Let's build one from scratch. Now, if we're not in an RO and we don't want to go into add labors and start one from here, let's say, we just have some extra time in the shop. We're going to start building those menu labors. The way that you do it, so you don't have to go to an actual RO, is under Manager. And here you'll notice we can manage our labor services, our sublets, our kits. So we're going to click on Manage Labor Service List. So give me an example out there, guys, of a typical menu that you have in your shop that would include parts and labor. Any suggestions? We got anybody out there? Hang on a minute. I think I needed to unmute some folks. Okay, so let me go through and unmute phones just a moment. Oh, we got a bunch of people that jumped on the call here since I started. So luckily we recorded these if you guys have any questions. Okay, anybody I unmuted? Give me, somebody's got to have some example out there of a menu labor. What's something we would come up with? How about let's do, we got one out there? Okay, let's go ahead and add a labor service, and we're going to do a menu labor for that synthetic job, okay? So we're going to call it OC Syn. And again, it's going to be oil change synthetic. Okay. And we're going to describe it as perform oil change, change oil and filter, and check fluids again. Kind of keep it real basic. So again, this time we're going to still pay our guys 2/10, and we're going to go ahead and let's go with the same labor rate, $8.20. I figured that one out before, just so you know. I didn't just pull that one out of air. And for my placeholder this time, I'm going to add oil for this, but the synthetic oil. I'm going to go ahead and select this one. I'm going to say 5 quarts. And then we're going to go ahead and add our placeholder, and we'll put a part on here. Oops, we're not going to put a part. We're going to actually put in a placeholder. Now, the only problem with this, guys, and I'll show you that you need to replace the part holder, but only do it once. So what was our? So now we come up to $57.95. But don't forget, I charge hazardous, remember, on my oil and my filter. And that will actually be calculated in here. So if I wanted to do a $59.95 oil change, I actually would leave off the $2 because I'm going to add that in automatically when I select my oil and filter, because I, again, tied those hazardous material fees to the particular oil in the filter. So let's go ahead and click Finish. So let's go into another ticket here. Let me try this. And that's not a good reason for service. It's a bearing. We'll just add oil change. Select it. And then we're going to go ahead and add that menu. So this time we're going to do the synthetic menu. Select it. Okay. So again, it says $57.95. So again, once we add it, I need to replace my oil filter with the real live part number. Let's do one for the inventory list. Let's do this. Let's see. How about that one? There we go. Okay, again, it's going to prompt me. I'm going to use my placeholder price again. Okay. And you'll see the system is actually discounting at 59%. That's how much it's going to change the regular price in order to get to my adjusted price. Or I could actually put my adjusted price in here at $5. Either way. So now I've got it down to, when I click on Summary, do I have it? Yep, here's my $2 for hazardous materials fee. Okay, so when I total this all up, it's still going to be $59.95 plus sales tax and my supply charge. So that's how we're sticking to that. Now, a couple things. Let's say I want to replace this filter. If I can't just right-click on it and replace it with a part from inventory. So let's say I deleted this. Are you sure you want to delete this? It now is going to change my pricing around to still be $59.95 without that part number. So now let's say I added in a different part because I used the wrong one. It's supposed to be, I don't know, this one. So let's say I put this, even if I change the price here, you'll notice that I've just gone up. Look, check out how much I'm charging now. I'm charging, my parts alone are $49.95. So I'm charging over $60 now for that oil change. So the one thing we need to keep in mind when we're doing menu labors is that if you're going to be switching out a lot of parts in and out, you might actually be better off using a kit. And we're going over kits next week. So it's just kind of how it works in your shop. A lot of people will do menu pricing for just quick estimates. If you want to get a quick estimate for a fixed amount brake job, and then use part placeholders. But if you know that you're going to be changing out, maybe adding in this kind of part, taking out that kind of part, not really just saying, okay, I'm just switching out this part placeholder for this one individual part, so I'm actually using a part from inventory. If you're going to be adding more parts than that, you probably want to steer away from the menu labors and really go more towards the kits department. And kits are real simple, easy to use, and real easy to modify. Again, the whole reasoning behind the menu pricing is those adjustments where you can say, yeah, my part costs a little bit more. I know I'm going to have a loss leader, but I want to stick to whatever that menu pricing is on my mailer, on my coupon. The other thing to keep in mind, I want to make sure you guys understand the ramifications of menu labors, is our profitability is usually off. And the other part that is off a little bit is when you look at the profitability of your labor. The problem with this is because we're not actually using, it's actually not under there, we're not actually saying I'm assigning 3/10 and my average cost per labor hour is X amount. We don't really get a real good profitability. So a lot of people will say, well, shoot, I looked at my profitability report for last month and I got some really weird numbers in there. Or I looked at my productivity report for my employees, and if I go off of my employees' productivity report based on billed hours, they won't show up for whenever you use these menu prices. So again, there was a big push out there for people to use, to have this availability in the system to be able to use the menu labors. But in my personal preference, I don't know, I'm more of a kit kind of person. Any feedback? Has anybody used the menu pricing at this time in MaxxTraxx? Anybody on the call?
I assume you can't tie these to kits at all, right?
You can't what?
Tie them to a kit or to a vehicle. So every
Not
time you're going to have to look up the oil filter individually?
Right, right. Yeah, it's more just using the parts placeholders to be able to knock out some quick estimates. You know, what's kind of cool is that if you want to just say, well, roughly this is if we throw an oil change on here and we throw a cooling system flush, which, you know, you can put on your antifreeze or whatever it is for your cooling system flush, you really can get an idea, a much more better ballpark, detailed out on your estimate to give somebody when they drop off their vehicle. Again, like I said, I'm much more of a fan of kits. Let's see, I don't know if we even have any here. I don't even have any built. I have a brand new fresh system for this webinar. But the nice thing about the kits is that, yes, you make them your make model specific, and you can search them that way. So can anybody think of any kind of examples of how they would use a menu labor? Or really, after looking at this and seeing how they're used, is this something that you really kind of want to steer clear of? What's some feedback on this?
Well, I can see it being valuable for like a seasonal special where there's a price, but there's several different, you know, filter options or that kind of thing.
Right, right. So what do you think about having to, you know, when you replace that part with the part, you know, that part placeholder with the actual part number, and if a filter normally would sell in your shop for, you know, $8.95, and your menu pricing is really structured to only sell it for $5, is that typically what you sell it for, or do you tell the customer, you know what, if you've got a, you know, a diesel Volkswagen Jetta spin-on, it's going to be a lot more expensive? How do you handle that with your customers?
Well, in our shop, we primarily use kits for that type of thing. So we may have a kit built for a specific vehicle that has a, you know, $13 oil filter as opposed to a $9 oil filter for a different vehicle. So rather than, you know, get trapped in just quoting one price and then letting our profits suffer, we just tailor it, you know, for different makes and models.
Okay. 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 Good feedback. I appreciate that. I'm sure other people on the call are kind of wondering the same thing. You know, as far as using oil changes as marketing tools, sending out postcards or coupons or sending out emails, that kind of thing, do most shops, are they still using the oil changes as a loss leader to get new business? Is that still pretty common? Yeah. So, and what, and I know it totally has to do with your marketplace, but typically how much are you guys charging for, you know, pretty standard, and I don't mean any, you know, any kind of special, but, you know, just regular 10W30 oil change, what are they charging around the country for that kind of thing?
Well, we typically get in the mid-40s for a, that would be a, like a 4-cylinder or V6 model.
And what part of the country are you in?
Southern California.
Okay, okay.
There's a lot of
how about some
that are charging, they'll do the specials for $29.95 or what have you. We just on that route.
Are you still feeling like you're getting new business based on those oil changes?
Yeah, typically when we advertise, we'll do an oil change and then add other options to it to build value at a higher price point to try to avoid the, you know, what we call, for lack of better words, bottom feeders. Out there, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, I worked for a shop that did a lot of mailings. I mean, just crazy, crazy mailings. They bought lists for customer acquisition, and they would just blast an entire zip code. And I found out, you know, the people that came in with those coupons typically never came back again. We did, of course, use a customer source to track, you know, how people came in, and then we do a report to see, well, have we seen them again? And if we advertise too low, at one point they did $19.95. A $19.95, like you said, is going to get a bottom feeder. What are some other shops using? What are some of your,
up here in the northern New England, we're getting approximately $35 to $40 per oil change for, you know, basic 4-cylinder 4 or 5 quarts of oil. And as far as, you know, pricing low on oil changes, I found that, you know, like you said, people just They just come in and they get the service for nothing, just about, and then you never see them again.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
Get to your point, Bob. What's going on? What's up?
You know, can we think of any other situations where we would use menu labors? Can you guys come up with any other examples or any other, you know, let me know some feedback. Is this actually a useful tool, or what do you think?
With the Fisher Auto Parts truck.
Well, I use it for like alignments. I have a little menu price built for tire balancing, because I separate the balancing from the labor of the tire just because of the way my market is here.
Okay.
But generally, I don't have very many menu priced labors because there's just so many variables for us, because we're, you know, truly independent. We work on so many different makes and models that you just can't tie a specific price down to a specific, you know, to not a specific, but a specific price to a very vague, you know, labor operation.
Right, right. Because you're all makes all models out there, right, Derek?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, the other place, you know, now I think about it, now you mentioned that, the one other place I saw a shop in Colorado Springs, a friend of mine actually, that just got MaxxTraxx here at the beginning of the year, been actually MotorTraxx user for about a decade. He would do alignments, and let's do an alignment and see why we would do it that way. So if we do an ad labor service and we do a menu price labor, we'll call it just, how about ALI? And we'll just call it alignment. So if I wanted, so let's say I paid my guy $8.10, but I wanted to be able to put in, it's $49.95, for example. I don't know if you can still get that. I just paid $129 yesterday for an alignment on my car. So if I were to click finish on this, just so I could get this out to my customer at $49.95, and if I select it, so it's still going to pay my guy the $8.10, but it's going to stick to that $49.95. So that's kind of, it's, you know, when you talk about menu labor, I always kind of in my mind get it that we're talking parts and labor, but we don't always have to have the parts, and that's a good way to get an exact amount, you know, that $49.95, that people just like to see that, and still be able to pay our guys the, you know, appropriate flat rate. So let's say, for example, let's do that again, add a labor service, and we'll do an alignment that's a flat rate. For example, you know, again, this is set up to be $8.10. So at my labor rate of $95, well, this is what I'd be charging the customer, $76. So what, you know, some people do is they'll play around with this a little bit. So let me see, if I make it $80, well, let me see, if I make it $70, you know, my hourly shop rate, well, how am I going to get it exactly? You know, maybe $62 is going to get me to 40. Oh, I'm close. So instead of having to go through the rigmarole of doing this, and yes, I've actually done this before.
So let's go. Opening. I'm going to assign it.
So right here, I think we got a number. So that's how we get to $49.95. But now we're playing around with our hourly shop rate, and, you know, frankly, then we kind of look at our profitability. So again, the two things I wanted you to keep in mind, so look at our profitability is 44%. Because I'm saving my average labor cost an hour is $35. So it's saying I'm just making, you know, if I play around with my labor rate too much, doesn't make sense. So then if I go ahead and put my hourly shop rate back at the 95 where it belongs, see, I'm back at 63% profitability. So either way you play with this, just so you're aware, because I had one shop just, well, in fact, that same one, we were just talking about alignments. He's like, Sabrina, wait a minute, my profitability reports are all over the place. What happened? And that's what happens. If you use these labors, it'll play with that. It'll change that up a little bit. But that's a good way to get an exact number. So,
Sabrina, is there any way to find out the profitability of that, just that priced, you know, that menu priced labor over a period of time?
You know, that's a good question. So if I wanted to look at, you know, I'm guessing here I would have to, let's look together because I don't know. We went under labor and we looked at our labor sales. Let's see if we can look at it just by labor, a labor code. You know, I don't know if I actually have any in the system yet. This is, again, a brand new, fresh system. It isn't messed up like Mine typically are. Let's go ahead and close that. Let's close this one out. Let's see. Pay it out. No.
I'm just thinking that'd be a good way to tell in the long run if you're actually losing on, a menu price labor that's using parts.
Yeah, good. Yeah, that is a really good idea. So let's look at this labor sales. Let's see if we can get so labor code. So let's put it ALI. And it says all labor types, so it should include my flat rate and. So it's telling me my count, my total quantity. I'm not seeing my profitability. Let's look one other place. Let's see, pay repair orders. See, this is the one that I'll tell you that thing actually kind of messes, the menu labor messes with this a little bit. So if I was just to look at that alignment for that job that I just did, so this from the Chrysler 300, you can see my parts markup, not very good. My net labor, I'm looking to see if I can find some profitability on this. And, I'm not. Let me do a little research on that offline, and I'll respond to you guys to see if there's any way we can track our profitability for menu services long term. So I'll reply once I check with my boss and see if we have something that we can, give you some visibility into that. Really, how much is this costing you?
Yeah, and that would include the parts as well.
Order profit.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not sure, but I thought I saw labor profit there.
Labor under labor or under service counter?
Under service counter, just a few clicks up, page repair order profit.
Okay, let's check. Let's take a peek and see what that says.
It may be there. I'm not sure.
So labor net sales cost. So this is our profitability by the repair order.
Menu item or not.
Right. But that's just going to give us our total. Great idea. If there isn't a feature in that, I know that they're working on. They've been kicking out brand new reports that are going to come out in this next update like candy. So let's see if we can check on a profitability report for menu labors. That's a great idea. And that way how hard is this? Well, first of all, how much business are you doing of menu labors? And we got that from the other report, but what's the profitability?
Yeah,
right.
And see if it really makes sense. Okay, I'll look into that, guys, and research that offline and reply to everybody that sent me an email. So again, if I go back to this labor and I look at my labor sales, yeah, I don't think this is going to give us that. But, I'm thinking maybe if we have room on this report, I'm going to see if we can add it. Yeah, let me see if we can add some profitability to labor sales.
Okay.
And any other questions, guys?
If you have a parts placeholder and you go to pay the repair order, will it prompt you that it still has a placeholder there?
Yes, and under setups and repair order and parts invoice setups, let's see. It should tell me in here somewhere. It will tell me if I have, or not even allow me to bill it out with a placeholder. Here we go. Require placeholders to be replaced on RO. And now we can't allow a manager override. You know how I'm a stickler about, I've got to have costs, got to have this, but you always have that one situation where you got to bill them out, and you can always void it. Go back in, replace that part holder with an actual part placeholder with an actual part number, and then repost it. Which, yes, I'm guilty. I've done that a few times just because you have to get the customer out the door. So, yes, you can require it.
Okay.
There are shops, again, that don't track their inventory or do accounting. They just really use MaxxTraxx for invoicing, and they don't do that, and they just use placeholders all the time. They don't really track their parts at all. So it really depends on how you're using it. I'm pretty certain nobody on this call uses the system that way, but there are a few out there. But, yes, you can require it, but allow the override.
Hello. Yeah.
Any other questions? Good questions, guys. So, again, probably the best reasons to use these is to, like we showed with the alignment, to get to an exact amount on, the $49.95 for an alignment, if we wanted to be able to, bill it out, but still pay our guys, because with a regular flat rate, let's say we're doing a regular flat rate, we can always unlink these and say, I may only bill my customer a half an hour for this, $47.50, but I can unlink it and pay a higher flat rate to my guy. You can do it that way. But what's nice kind of really about the menu is that if you want to get to that exact $49.95, that's what's nice to be able to use the menu. And then the only other thing that we talked about, again, the $49.95, the only thing we always talked about as far as building those menu labors, like I said, if I know that I'm always going to use, like for example, on a cooling system flush, the antifreeze, I may not put a part placeholder in there. I already know I'm going to use my antifreeze or my coolant part number. And then I may actually create a separate menu labor that says like, cooling system flush Dex Cool. So, whatever part. So you don't always have to use that parts placeholder that you have to switch out. And, for some people, they like it. Again, the one other thing I want to remind you is that if you have to add a part to that job, it's added outside. Remember, it's added outside of the of whatever the menu is. So if I were to add a part, which I could, see onto this menu labor, I could add an additional part. Let's say I had a shim, which I don't think I have a shim in here, but I'm going to throw an oil filter on that. So I'm still going to sell it. Let's say I sell it for $5. It's not going to affect my menu labor. So if you do an oil change and you have to add, a drain plug or a special filter gasket, or let's say you upsell them and you add some kind of, oil additive or something like that, you just add it to the labor line, and it doesn't change the menu labor total. It's still always going to be the $49.85. Now, like I said, it kind of works as a double-edged sword, though, because if you need to replace a part number that you already put on there and like, oh, darn it, it's the wrong part number, then when you delete that part number, because remember, we won't have a right-click. We actually we won't have a right-click to select after we replace the oil filter once. Remember, we have to delete it, put the other part number on there. Just make sure you catch yourself, because it will not let you replace out that part more than once. It'll add it additionally. Does that make sense, or is that a little confusing? Okay, guys. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the call. If nobody else has any questions, I appreciate the feedback on what people are charging for oil changes. Kind of like when I talked about a little bit last week when we talked about the parts price matrix. I think that people are often in kind of isolation, thinking that, man, oh man, my parts are too high, and I need to lower them a bit to get new business. But I think that we find when we get in groups like this that people are charging more and they're getting more. It's just attracting a different kind of clientele. So I do appreciate you guys' feedback on that. And of course, it's all regional, but the more you know of what they're charging in your area, that more effectively you can get value or get the prices for the value you're delivering. Okay, guys. Well, if we don't have any more questions, we're going to have to get a little bit more involved next week when we go into building a kit. Definitely a little bit more involved than doing a menu labor. A little bit more setup involved. But conversely, they are so easy. One of my favorite thing about the kits is you can take anything that you've previously built on an open or closed RO, right-click on it, and just make the kit on the fly. So we'll go into that a little bit more next week, but that is actually one of my probably top 5 favorite features in the whole program, and I think once you guys learn how to use those and build them, you'll find them very useful. So everybody have a fantastic St. Patrick's Day, and don't get too crazy tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing hearing some of you guys on our webinar next Wednesday, same time, going over kits, and more kits, okay?
All right, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. You guys have a good one. Okay. Bye-bye.